We're here really to talk about what we think it means and where we go from here. And first, what it means is that we are pledged to make sure that three things happen. One is that the survivors who have suffered so much for so long come first. Second, that all the measures that we have been working so hard to put in place to protect kids in the future and disgorge all the secrets of the past, including the files, and use the professionals to help the Archdiocese get that achieved, continue. Third, to make sure that the core ministry of the Archdiocese, the core work of the Archdiocese, is not and does not have to be interrupted or impeded in any way by this petition for reorganization. Those are three principles that we will be operating under, and this action taken today does not have to, nor will it get in front of strict adherence to those principles. I think some information and context has to be given as to why this seems, or why it's necessary. For months and prior to the settlement of the Doe 1 case, we have been working with the Archdiocese to try to get them to clean up and do all the things that we thought and they committed to wanting to do to protect kids in the future and come clean with the past. And that's been a work in progress. And the announcement of the Doe 1 case was evidence of that. And since that time, there have been continued disclosures about the past. Those disclosures, that is the files of offenders, the names of offenders, and all the information about the past that needs to be known will continue, and this filing today does not stop that. What this filing today does, however, it does stop the trials of the cases that we have scheduled for trial the end of this month, and any other trials of any cases that are now pending or to be brought. And it takes those trials and all the other cases that are pending out of the state court and puts them into the bankruptcy court under the supervision of a bankruptcy judge and trustee, so that the total picture can be looked at, so that the survivors who have made claims and are yet to make claims can be fairly and more equitably treated. And if this petition was not filed today, frankly, that could not happen, because the trials that were coming up at the end of this month would have ended up, those that came first would have had justice served first. And that would not be fair to the other survivors who have suffered and who have claims and who deserve a measure of justice and compensation. And so it will stop the trials from moving forward. It will not stop the disclosure and the child protection measures that have been put in place and the work that we continue to do with the Archdiocese to make sure there's strict and rigorous adherence to that. It is our belief that this action taken today is actually necessary. And as I said, comes as no surprise. For months and months and weeks, we have been working with the Archdiocese and the representatives rigorously to try to figure out what is the best way, what is the fair way to handle not only the claims that have been brought by the courageous survivors that have come forward as a result of the Child Victims Act that they never would have otherwise been allowed to come forward and bring, and those that are going to come forward while that act is still in play until May of 2016. And how best can we really handle this and honor our pledge to put victims first, and have the Archdiocese honor the pledge that they've made to put victims first. And so we've been working with them, unlike any time before. And the good news is we have been working with them, and the good news is we will continue to work with them in the spirit of cooperation and putting victims first, and making sure their core ministries are not impeded, and making sure the disclosures and the child protection measures are rigorously adhered to and continue to progress. Now, what can we expect to happen from this point forward? We currently have filed 16 cases against the Archdiocese on behalf of courageous survivors. Some were scheduled for trial at the end of this month. All 16 of those cases go into the bankruptcy court now. We have also made notices of claims on behalf of 112 other survivors against a broad array of offenders. 112 claims have been given to the Archdiocese. We have other claims and other survivors that have yet to have been filed, but so far that makes 126 cases.
28.
128 against the Archdiocese. All of those then go into the process of reorganization under the supervision of the bankruptcy court, the bankruptcy trustee, the bankruptcy judge. It is our goal in that process to deal with the financial considerations in a way that makes sure the survivors are fully and fairly compensated and treated. The Archdiocese filings reflect that they themselves don't seem to have the ability to satisfy the obligations that they have to these survivors. And of course, that makes people worried, and that makes people sad, and that makes people fearful. But the good news is that the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis has insurance, and they have a lot of it. And they have a lot of different insurance companies that are what we call on the risk, that provided insurance from the 50s to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s to the present. And we and the Archdiocese in the last weeks and months have tried to bring, and they particularly have tried to bring the insurance companies to the table to see if something could be done pre-bankruptcy with those insurance companies and with the full participation and cooperation of the Archdiocese. Unfortunately, that wasn't successful. And that's why you saw some weeks ago the Archdiocese file an action against a large number of insurance companies in the federal district court, seeking to have a declaration that they have insurance coverage for the claims that have been brought and those that will be brought. And that is pending before Judge Kyle in the federal district court. That insurance participation is going to play a significant role, and we're going to work with the Archdiocese and hopefully eventually with the insurers to make sure this is handled in a fair and expeditious way. This will mark the 14th bankruptcy that has been filed involving a Catholic religious organization. And up here, we put a check by each of the ones that have been filed previously where we have been directly involved. And there are variable experiences in each of these cases. And one thing I can say to the survivors, and one thing I can say to the community of faith, one thing I can say to the public and assure everybody that what is going to happen and what we expect to have happen in working with the Archdiocese in this case is that we will do this in a way like it's never been done before, in a way that can bring healing, that can bring compensation, that can advance change and not fight and get involved in contention and adversary relationship, but in the spirit of cooperation, in the spirit of conciliation, in the spirit of healing and reconciliation. We will fight if we have to, but we don't believe we have to here. We have to work together. And to the extent all of those other cases, now 14 in number, we've been involved in 8 before. And the most recent and the most ugly of all these is the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, and everybody here knows what has happened there has been a horror, has been a travesty, and it's because the Archbishop there, Listecki, made a conscious choice to deceive, to lie, to make promises and break promises, and to beat down the survivors, and transfer assets, and move money, and conceal crimes, and continue to do a lot of those same things. And at this point in time, 5 years down the road, there is yet to bring any resolution to any of the survivors. And they have expended in payment of attorney's fees to the bankruptcy lawyers of something approaching $20 million?
Over 18.
It's over $18 million in the Milwaukee Archdiocese bankruptcy. I'm here to tell you that we're involved in that. And I'm here to tell you that it's a sad and horrendous nightmare that they put the survivors through. I'm also here to tell you that this Archdiocese will not do that. And I have confidence in them that they won't. And that they're not filing this petition today for the same motives and with the same strategy that they employed in Milwaukee. And I think the survivors need to hear that, and I think the community of faith needs to hear that, and I think the public needs to hear that, because what happened in Milwaukee is a nightmare for all. It will not be repeated here. The other diocese in which there have been filings of bankruptcy, there are 2 in which there was a similar window as there is in Minnesota under the Child Victims Act. In San Diego, they filed for reorganization in 2007, and we reached resolution of those claims fairly quickly and fairly, without much contention. Another state where there was a similar window was in Delaware and the Diocese of Wilmington. And we were involved there. And ultimately, those claims settled. So there have been variable outcomes in each of these cases, But in the 2 states where there have been windows that predated the filing of reorganization, there was resolution, and it was fair resolution for the survivors. In some of the other cases, there's been variable outcomes, and it's largely because of 2 things. Lack of insurance in many cases, which there isn't here, and statute limitations that the diocese or the religious organization, such as the religious order of priests of the Jesuits, were able to hide behind the statute of limitations. Here they can't do that because of the Child Victims Act, and that's still open until May of 2016. So we're here to really assure folks that nobody gets joy in any of this. But I think there is some comfort in letting folks know that we are devoted and dedicated to protecting the survivors and making sure that they're honored in this process and treated fairly. That we are committed to continuing to work with the Archdiocese and all of them and their representatives in a way that has begun and will continue to be productive, cooperative, and collaborative. And that we will do everything that is possible and are confident that we can, that what we do in this process is not going to impede the core mission and the good work that the Archdiocese does. But we're going to be vigorous and rigorous in making sure we don't see any more of what has happened in the past. And of that, I take some comfort, and I want others to as well, and particularly the survivors, because it is the courage of the survivors who made a conscious choice to find their voice, share their secret, come forward, and take some action now that the law opened it up so they could. And it's their courage that has brought to bear the painful truth about the past, 150,000 pages of priest files of offenders, many of which we have made public and will continue to. The revelation of many known offenders who had not been known before. For example, this week, Stacy, we identified 7 additional offenders whose names, who had been accused of childhood sexual abuse and released their files, who had never been known to the public before as having been accused. And it is those files that are now on our website, those names that are now known, at least to the public, and that work, in cooperation with the Archdiocese, I might add, that work will continue. That work will continue. And that gives us comfort also. Some will say that, and I just read something about, well, this was really designed to stop the trial, or the trials we had scheduled at the end of this month, so that the Archbishop and the other top officials don't have to testify. And I will say, quite candidly, in past bankruptcies where we were involved, in Portland, in San Diego, in Davenport, and other places, they did use reorganization to avoid trial and having to give testimony. This time, it's different. We've already put under oath Archbishop Nienstedt and all the top officials in the Doe 1 case in preparation for that trial. And we have videotaped that. And we have disgorged file after file after file Electronically it's stored and manually stored, and are continuing to do that. And so it is a different day. And we are now together working with the Archdiocese to find a better way. And as I said, that brings us no joy, but I hope that brings the folks that are worried about this, and the survivors particularly, some comfort.